Greetings, loved ones. I'm Gracie Murphy, president of HOC Justice Project, and we are continuing in our Freedom from Violence series. I'm also the author of the book Journey to Justice, which you can find on Amazon if you're interested. This is a story of how we came to be in this ministry and all that we've been able to accomplish. So for the last 16 years, we've been working here in Honduras to rescue, care for, redeem, and empower justice for women and children who suffer violence. For more information on our ministry, you can check out our website, which is listed in the description. To help get these important messages out, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single episode. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button, and please share all of these messages with someone else, because you never know, just by doing so, you could save a life. Today, we're going to talk more about our responsibility in relationship to violence against women and children and what we're supposed to do. We need to collaborate with each other and with authorities to rescue those who suffer oppression, care for them, work with God so their lives can be redeemed, and we must empower justice. We must teach the community around us about prevention of violence, and we must also teach about how to intervene when they encounter a vulnerable person who is suffering violence. Many would say, well, that's not my problem. However, there will be victims of violence in your community, your work, your school, your family, your church, and your ministry. Remember, the World Bank said 1 in 7 or 1 in 3 women suffer violence. I have to go back and check that. Today, right now, at this moment, I want to specifically speak to pastors and ministry leaders for a minute. Here it is. Here's the information. The United Nations says that 1 in 3 women worldwide will experience violence in their lifetime. Let us look out through the eyes of the woman in your pew most Sundays who comes, or the woman who comes for food assistance. She's always looking for help, but she's also hiding her shame. Her pain is invisible to us if we don't know what to look for. Do we even ask if anything is wrong if we can see the bruises under her makeup? What about the child in Sunday school or at school who sits apart from the others, or who moves as though they might be in pain? If you see a bruise on their arm, do you ask? What if the woman told you her husband was beating her, or the child told you her stepfather had hurt her? Would you step into their mess? Or would you say a prayer for them, maybe share a few encouraging words and walk away? Mishpat is an evaluation by God of how we treat the vulnerable. Will you be the one to step in and rescue? Or will you be silent? Will you blame the victim and tell her she should be a better wife? You need to know that abuse is about inequality of power. It is when one person has power over another and uses that power to abuse them. What do we need to do? God gives this answer in Isaiah 61:6. Again, I'm looking at this from my perspective of my faith, but this applies to everybody, regardless of your faith. Verse 1 says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom to the captives and release from the darkness for the prisoners." The me here is you. God has anointed you to preach the good news that God does not want anyone to suffer, that God loves justice, that he has heard the cries of his people and has come to rescue them, that Jesus loved them and us so much that he died on the cross for Tzedakah, to make things right. Tzedakah. Tzadequah. He sent you and me to bind up the brokenhearted. Who are the brokenhearted? Women beaten by their husbands, children abandoned by parents, elderly who are abused by their families. He has sent us to proclaim freedom to the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. Who are the captives? The prisoners. A young girl trapped in sex trafficking. A woman who cannot get out of an abusive relationship. A young girl whose uncle comes into her bed at night. If Jesus does not show up in the middle of this suffering and bring rescue, if you do not show up in the middle of this suffering and bring rescue, What hope do they have? God's law and human law requires us to act. In Honduras, there's a thing called public order. Public order consists of the duty of every person and all authority to denounce any person who commits violations of the law to the detriment of the rights of other people. This means that every person, even if you do not work in public service, is required to report to the authorities any violations of the rights of another person. In dealing with special victims or vulnerable groups, any person who has knowledge of abuse against a woman, a child, an elderly person, a handicapped person, or any other person who is in a state of vulnerability must report that abuse. In addition, in Honduran law, and I'm sharing this because we work here and there are a lot of missionaries and people in Honduras watching this. In addition, in Honduran law, Article 246 of the Penal Code establishes the obligation to denounce any public official or employee who, on the occasion of his duties, has knowledge of a criminal act. All who are aware of criminal acts or omissions during the exercise of their activities. This is their version of the mandated reporter law. We must all intervene when we encounter victims of violence. I'm going to wait for the noise to pass. This is just our life. John 15, verses 12 to 13 and verse 17 says, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life. This is my command, love each other." Pretty simple command, isn't it? Well, let me ask you this. If you know Mary is abused by her husband every night, if you've seen the bruises and the tears, maybe even heard her cries next door, and you do nothing to rescue her, to intervene, remember, God is looking for someone to intervene, and bring her husband before the authorities for what he has done to her, are you loving her as Christ loved you? Would Christ turn a deaf ear and blind eye and allow her to continue to suffer? I do not believe so. Many people will say, well, I don't want to get between her and her husband, or that is their family business. I don't want to mess with it, or that really isn't my problem or calling. God was appalled to see that there was no one to intervene. He was disgusted, as it says in Spanish, to see there was no justice. Mishpat. How do you treat the most vulnerable? Let's go to Leviticus 5:1. If a person sins because he does not speak up when he hears a public charge to testify regarding something he has seen or heard about, he will be held responsible. Another version says, if you refuse to declare under oath what you have seen or heard, you will suffer the consequences of your sin. You must speak up. You must intervene. God demands it. The law demands it. Today, you now know what you must do. You must intervene. You must report. You must testify. Let us look at James 4:17. Anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins. Today, you know the good you ought to do. You must speak up. You must intervene. You must testify. Our mishpat, how we treat those who are vulnerable, will be evaluated by God himself when we stand before him. The question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? This series is dedicated in honor of Gabby Pettito, a bright young woman whom the world has lost because of gender violence. You could be the person who saves a life. You are called. We all are called to be champions for justice. Those who suffer violence need those who love them and those who don't even know them to step out and reach out to them, to give them the courage to leave before it is too late. If you are a victim of violence, know this. God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. If you are a victim of violence or you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help or reach out to somebody. Please reach out to somebody. To help get these messages out, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss an episode. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and please share these messages with others. You never know. Just by doing so, you could save a life. If you, your organization, church, ministry, school, or business would like for us to provide training to your people, we can arrange it. Just email me at my address in the description. Tomorrow, we will talk more about our responsibility in response to violence against women and children. Until then, God bless you.